Hello, my name is Konrad from Racing Custom Parts. Today I will show you our parts for 6-speed manual gearbox from Volkswagen.
Hi, welcome. Alright, so today we'll talk about the parts we offer for the 02M and 2Q transmissions. Manual 6-speed, Volkswagen Group. We offer a longitudinal reinforcement to keep the transmission stable. A fork for the third and fourth gear equals, and a support bearing for the clutch shaft at the third and fourth gears. Why do we need these parts? I'll try to explain and show you briefly. Alright, let's start with the third and fourth gear support bearing. Why do we need this third, fourth gear support? I'll show you. Maybe I'll show it like this. This is why we need it. We have one set of teeth here, and the cooperating gear here. What happened? This is how it looks. It will look better from the overhead camera. Why do we need it? Well, because what happened? The input shaft, the clutch shaft bent here during operation. When it bent, the teeth no longer aligned. Two teeth caught on each other, causing a hole here. And the entire gear was ground down to nothing. How did it end? Well, as expected. This happens to be my transmission. It ended in the usual way with the car loaded onto a tow truck. I've broken more transmissions in my life, but that's a story for later. Why do we need the fourth gear support? So, the clutch shaft has bearings here and here. The third and fourth gear are in the middle of this shaft, and when transferring high power, the shaft can bend, which can cause the teeth to shift sideways. If they shift slightly, a failure is imminent. The shaft is stripped, and the other gear is damaged. But let's get to the point. How do we prevent this from happening? We need to ensure the clutch shaft stays aligned throughout acceleration, especially when shifting into third or fourth gear. There's a component, a shaft support, which mounts like this on the gearbox. The support's purpose is to keep the shaft pressed against the other set of teeth. The reinforcement prevents it from bending, and by preventing it from bending, it keeps the teeth aligned, thus protecting the transmission from failure, as you can see. Now, let me show you how to mount this reinforcement on the gearbox. I've got more items here that I've broken. Here's a casing I broke with my own hands in my car. If you're curious about which car, you can check out this channel. There are plenty of older videos, and you'll find it for sure. But shall I show you something as well? When we install it, first, we need to insert the clutch shaft. Set it in the bearing, and mark the height where you'll need to drill a hole. For the 02M gearbox, the one with a full casting at the rear, there's ribbing here, a reinforcing element on the casing. You'll need to grind it down, clean it, so that this reinforcement can be mounted here. The angle is made so that once aligned, the part will fit precisely with the gearbox. The only insufficient sealing here is simply applying silicone during final assembly, which will seal the gearbox. We place this part inside. Obviously, screws go through here, though it might not be very visible, or even at all. But this is how it's mounted. This detail, inside on the gearbox. Then we tighten it with bolts. The first reinforcement is done. The reinforcement here is shaped to clear the pair of gears next to it. Now, let's move on. So, let's get back to our shafts. The clutch shaft and the main drive shaft. I don't have the third shaft here, but I don't need it for the demo, so I didn't bring it. We now have the gearbox reinforced at this point, so the shaft won't move to the side or wobble. It's reinforced at one point now. However, with helical gears, the forces acting on these shafts are not only transverse but also longitudinal. So, during operation, the gears try to slide out from each other, shifting in this way. This can also lead to breakage of this type. Pushing the gearbox out will cause it to crack more horizontally than vertically. This casing was damaged by a poorly fitted selector for a dogbox transmission. So, if these gears manage to slide like this, shifting the shaft, and trust me, it can happen. The gearbox will crack because it opens up, and then, well, you know. We have a solution for this. It's this type of reinforcement which goes across the gearbox. However, I need a different gearbox. Here, I have a ready set for the 2Q gearbox, which has a bearing covered with a plastic cap here. For these 6-speed gearboxes, we have two types. The 02M, as you just saw, is fully aluminum, while the 2Q has a cap and a roller bearing. The 02M has tapered bearings. These details differ from each other, including in diameter here and the height between these parts. So, when ordering, you need to specify which gearbox you have so that I can make it properly for you. Installing it is quite simple. The easiest way is to mark the centers of the holes. You drill two 12.5mm holes to allow two M12 bolts, two long studs, to go through. Final assembly is also sealed with silicone here. So, the first part is mounted, we'll come back to it shortly. I'll show you the second part, which is the gearbox bell housing. I can't fit everything at once, and I have ruined a few gearboxes in my time. For example, this one here took the clutch quite nicely and left two neat stripes. I think it was interesting. I know it was interesting. If I find the video, I'll paste it here for you. other side of the gearbox is done the same way. We drill the holes in the center, slightly larger in this case, so that the steel parts can fit here. The same goes for the front part. We seal everything with silicone, as you can see from the remnants here. This part fits like this. Once you've prepped and cleaned the gearbox, both parts, and prepared the holes, you assemble the gearbox with the countershafts, the main transmission here. Then you bolt the gearbox casing from above, and finally, mount our reinforcement. From this side and the other, we seal with silicone. The nuts that go on the other side should be tightened to 25 Nm, no more, since they're just supposed to hold, not compress the gearbox. They work on the principle of impact holding when force is applied, rather than compressing. The idea is not to tighten too hard. If you over-tighten, you could distort the bearing seats. So, 20 to 25 Nm is plenty. It should simply hold when there's force on the gears, not be overly tightened. The next part is the shift fork, also called the selector fork, for the third and fourth gear as well. In the 02M gearbox, this part is brass and can crack. It happens quite often. When it breaks, it'll leave one gear engaged while you're shifting to another. If you manage to engage fourth and fifth at the same time, you'll lock the entire gearbox. And nothing will save you then. Everything will just blow, the casing will open, and both gear pairs will grind down. The gearbox will need a major overhaul or replacement, considering its cost. Unless you have an expensive insert inside, then it's even less pleasant. Alright, let's go back for a moment, as I forgot something. This part here is only 2 mm thick, and in 98 to 99% of cases, it's no problem any clutch will fit with it. However, if you have a custom clutch, or maybe one that's slightly taller, remember this is only 2 mm, which isn't much. Another modification could be, if the gearbox has been modified, or the block has been modified, and you find the clutch is rubbing against this reinforcement, you can order an additional part, a spacer that we also have on our website, 3 mm high, which goes between the gearbox and the engine. 3 mm should definitely give you enough space for this 2 to 2.5 mm part. However, this isn't a standard practice, since out of about 200 reinforcements sold, we've only sold around 5 of these spacers. So it's a very small percentage, no need to stress over it prematurely. In most cases, this part is simply unnecessary. However, if it happens to you, and you hear grinding, remember you can always add this type of spacer. Alright, so here's a brief summary about strengthening 6-speed Volkswagen Group gearboxes. A fork for third and fourth gear, as the original brass forks tend to break. A support for the clutch shaft around third and fourth gear to prevent the shaft from bending. And longitudinal reinforcement for the gearbox. That keeps the casing, bearings, and interlocking gears in place. This reinforcement protects us from axial forces on the shafts. It also protects against clutch shaft bending. Of course, the fork only protects if the original one breaks and you engage second gear, which can end badly. It always ends the same way. It'll just end in failure. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'll be recording videos with parts that are currently in production, made for a customer, and which I'll pack and ship after recording. As you probably know, most of our parts are produced to order. There aren't large warehouses with tons of these parts. For a simple reason, we manufacture these parts ourselves, on site. We don't need to order 100 units from a manufacturer for a better price to trade them. We're not traders, we're manufacturers of these components. We try to show this in our videos, so you can see that our parts are made locally, in our workshop, on our machines. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode. Take care. Goodbye.